Boris Johnson makes inappropriate proposal in Dudley.
Let's do it.
Boris Johnson also talks about his favourite part of a woman's body.
But.
And Boris Johnson gives his verdict on what he thinks of people in ridiculously loud suits misquoting him by malicious and careful editing.
And that is not only unjust, it is such a waste of human talent.
These are the interesting times. Hello, my name's Matt Johnson, and each week I will be taking a satirical swipe at the goings-on and off of the UK politics scene, where at the moment, well, how can I best describe what we are trying to do in this country?
We will double down on levelling up, if you can make sense of that.
Yep, that's the guy in charge, Boris Johnson, who was in Dudley this week to set out, in relatively clear language, his vision of the future. There was, as can be expected, lots of hyperbole.
Build back better, build back greener, build back faster.
Build better, build bigger, build faster, build smoother, build finer, build greater, healthier, fitter, best, stronger, flatter, fatter, put it in some batter, Britain. Whew, I'm going to try and make some use of that. But there was some detail in there as well, including biggest ever funding for the NHS, 20,000 more police, 10 more hospitals, and planting of approximately 115 square miles of woodland every year. You have to wonder who's going to pay for this and where it's all going to go. Well, a closer look at this speech might give you an idea. See if you can spot the thread that's keeping Boris's plan together.
But this moment also gives us a much greater chance to be radical, and it's to galvanise this whole process that this government will shortly bring forward the most radical reforms of our planning system since the end of the Second World War. I'm conscious, as I say all this, that it sounds like a prodigious amount of government intervention. And we can do all this now, partly because of the prudent management of the economy in the last 10 years, but also because we're planning to invest now when the cost of borrowing allows it and when the returns are greatest. And this summer, we will be creating a new science funding agency to back high-risk, high-reward projects. And no, we won't get everything right. We certainly won't get everything right first time.
Yeah, seeing as the government hasn't opened the casinos yet, this is the only game in town. And this government is only too happy to throw the fiscal dice on all our futures. It's the Tories' new game, punt with a cunt, where rather than put real ideas and genuine investment in place, we decided on political pep talks that involve hand gesticulation and three-word slogans like these.
Build, build, build.
And these.
Building, building, building.
And this.
For jobs, jobs, jobs.
COVID may have taught us a few things, but surely the most important thing is just how crucial careful planning is. How vital the ability to not cut corners for a cheap cheer. No, not with this government. You only have to look at Brexit, coronavirus, track and trace, lockdown, any of the phases coming out of lockdown, and now for rebuilding the country, the government has got a half-assed plan with half-assed investment. And I don't think anybody should be surprised when they make a complete arse of it. Oh, and here's another example. Do you remember the government's implementing strict quarantine measures on new arrivals flying in? No? Well, don't worry, you haven't missed anything. We are going to be lifting them on all but the most heavily affected countries, like the USA, Brazil, and Thailand. Thailand? Yes, Thailand, with a total of 58 deaths and no new cases in 3 weeks. That's our way of saying we may live in a toxic cesspit with the government completely bereft of ideas, but we're still going to make you wipe your feet when you come in. Also on the list, I'm guessing, is us. Wait, does this mean that if you take off in Gatwick and land in Manchester, you have to self-isolate for 2 weeks? Don't worry though, because if you want to get to a country that's not on the list, I found a workaround. And when I say I, of course, I mean him. Yes, Bozo Sr. travelled to Greece via Bulgaria to visit his villa. He did this to avoid the ban Greece has on flights from the UK. But don't worry, there's none of this testing his eyesight stuff. Daddy Johnson had a perfectly good reason for flying there. He was going to COVID-proof his villa before letting season. Are you fucking kidding me? He said I needed to set up distancing measures at the property because they're taking it very seriously over there. Yeah, no shit, they're taking it seriously. I hear they've stopped all flights coming from the UK. Stanley Johnson spoke about the need to open up the borders between the countries, suggesting that as far as go, he hasn't been paying a lot of attention to what his son does. Although, opening up the air bridges would be a good opportunity for the UK government to test out its point system, which is when people around the world decide not to come to the UK, because what's the point? He blathered on, the Greeks are trying to stop bulk arrivals from the UK, but they were quite happy to have me coming in. Bulk arrivals? I'm guessing that your son won't be allowed in any time soon. Yes, that's a fat joke. Although that's a little unfair on Boris, as I understand it, he's going through a bit of a health kick, as seen by this rather bizarre picture taken of him doing a push-up for the Mail on Sunday. One. Who does a workout in their suit and tie in the office? He's turned into the David Brent of politics. No, seriously, he's turned into the David Brent of politics. Who remembers this? Brilliant. That was a really good show. Bumbling, socially inept and desperate for attention, Prime Minister Boris Johnson then went on LBC and took some questions there and spoke about having a US-style daily briefing to the British people.
A daily press briefing. I've seen that in one of the newspapers. Is that truth? Is there truth to that?
Well, I think what we need to. I think the people have liked a more direct, detailed information from the government about what's going on.
Yes, we would. But bearing in mind it's been you in charge for the last 7 months, none of us are holding our breaths. Which is a shame, really, because that's probably the only way we could stop ourselves getting infected.
Where there's no virus at all, we're having an air bridge.
So these countries don't miss out. Told you I would get some use out of that week. North Korea has reported no new cases of coronavirus, although health officials say this is unlikely. They have been able to do this by imposing a self-imposed lockdown on a large amount of their citizens, or prison as it's otherwise known, and staying in that part of the world, Hong Kong, which has seen constant suppression of peaceful protests, have been extended citizenship by the British government for up to 3 million of them. And this is fantastic news. Will help them be able to escape an organised totalitarian dictatorship and join a disorganised one. When asked what he would do to accommodate 3 million people, Boris said this.
But how can we prepare if we don't know how many are coming? It's like inviting people to a party and you don't know. He said yes.
Well, I mean, don't forget, we used to have a system whereby 580 million people could come, which we've just got rid of.
Okay, so possible 3 million to come in. Now, a couple of things. Presuming the figure he meant to say was 580 million, where has he got that from? There are 445 million people in the EU. Even allowing for counting us, which he shouldn't be doing because A, we've left, and B, we're already here, that would only put it at 510 million. Now, those 510 million, do you know how many are citizens from the EU? 3 million in 15 and a half years. It's almost like it's not that big a deal to accommodate that many immigrants into the country. And staying in the Southern Hemisphere, in New Zealand, the Health Minister, David Clark, resigned over blunders of the country's handling of coronavirus, which included having 2 people leave isolation early to visit a dying parent, and the Health Minister himself driving 12 miles during lockdown. So, for those keeping score, New Zealand, 22 deaths, 3 weeks with no new cases, and the Minister handing in his resignation over driving 12 miles during lockdown, albeit without the virus. And in common sense land, around about 67,000 deaths, but let's be honest, who the fuck knows? 6 months off, on again, off, on again, off, on again. Okie dokie, schools opening, closing, pubs opening at 6 in the morning. Let's all have a Leicester lockdown. Lex Luthor drives 260 miles, family on board, riddled with the plague to test his eyesight, and not so much as an apology. They take precautions, we take the piss. Didn't you encroach on my social distancing space? Yes, that's right, the pubs are back open because, as Boris knows, a piss population is a happy population, at least till closing time. But the police have said that drunk people can't be trusted with social distancing. Of course they can't. That's why you can't drink and drive or operate machinery after a few pints. And it's why the RAF motto is through adversity to the stars, and not who's up for a curry. France has a new Prime Minister. Well, sacred blue. This is something, I imagine. I don't have any jokes on this because, well, A, I don't have any. And B, let's be honest, if I did, you wouldn't understand them, so I'll let it be wasted on you. Oh, and it looks like the charges against Prince Andrew will be dropped following the tragic suicide of Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a mistake. That's actually from next week's news. No predictions this week, I'm afraid, as it's all a bit too unpredictable, which I realise is the point. But I think I would rather buy a lottery ticket, which at least is 14 million to 1, but still better odds than working out what this solar slime ball is likely to do next. I hope you're all enjoying these vids, and if you are, please ensure you don't miss another by subscribing and hitting the notification bell. And I'll see you all next Monday. Take care.
I don't believe in gestures, I believe in substance. I don't believe in gestures, I believe in substance.
I think I'm done here.